Oh boy, I'm walking into the lion's den on this one. Sonic Adventure 2 is probably one of the most controversial games in the entire Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. Yeah, people who say the game was amazing and it's the best Sonic game ever made. But on the other hand, yeah, people who say the game is overrated and a pile of trash. This was also the nail in the coffin that divided Sonic fans into old versus new. Like I said before in the past, I didn't own a Sega Genesis or a Sega Dreamcast growing up in the 90s. And as far as Sonic went, the only exposure I had of him was the first Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon. And to be honest, my first Sonic game was actually Sonic Advance for a Game Boy Advance released in 2001. However, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle was my first console Sonic game, and as you probably guessed already, I loved this game a lot when I was a kid. I had a lot of fun with it, and it provided me with plenty of enjoyment. However, I have replayed this game so many times, and well, I can admit that the game is not perfect, and I'm not going to sugarcoat my thoughts on the game, but I'm also going to keep a certain perspective on it as well. So with all that out of the way, here's my review for Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. So after the success of the first Sonic Adventure game, Sonic Team started work on the sequel, Sonic Adventure 2, and the game was developed in a span of 18 months. The original Sonic Adventure 2 was released on June 23, 2002 for the Sega Dreamcast, and it was later re-released for the Nintendo Gamecube on February 11, 2002. Sonic Adventure 2 was the last Sonic game to appear on the Sega Dreamcast, and also marked Sonic's 10-year anniversary. So as you can imagine, the pressure was pretty high. However, in the end, the game was a complete success, and it was received positively despite a few flaws. So yeah, at the time, the game was critically acclaimed, but in recent years, a lot of people have come to hate this game, due to how popular it became. And like I mentioned before, caused a divide between Sonic fans. But that's a discussion for another video. Now as far as the presentation goes, the graphics look okay for their time. Character models look pretty good and were fleshed out a bit more from the last game, but some of the lighting on the characters looked a bit off when compared to the original Dreamcast port. Besides that, the characters look fine, however the character animations looked horrible. The characters move like they're being controlled by puppet strings or something, and it just looks very awkward. But ignoring that, again, the character models themselves look fine. The developers wanted the game to run at a solid 60 frames per second, but because they were not experienced with it, the level design had to be narrowed down and less open compared to the levels in the last game. Honestly, I was a little disappointed because I liked the exploration aspect of the first adventure game, but I can understand why they did this. Anyway, let's get into the game's story. The main plot of the game is that Dr. Eggman is out on a mission to take over the city of Station Square to build his Eggman Empire. And to do this, he breaks into a secret military base to steal a secret weapon called the Ultimate Life Form. His ultimate life form turns out to be a black hedgehog named Shadow, and upon setting him free, he helps Dr. Eggman on his quest for world domination by showing him the Eclipse Cannon, a weapon powerful enough to destroy an entire planet if fully powered by the 7 Chaos Emeralds. After Sonic meets Shadow, Shadow escapes and Sonic ends up getting captured and later detained on Prison Island, so he's later rescued by Tails and Amy. And soon after, they learn of Dr. Eggman's plan for world domination, after they watch him destroy half of the moon with the Eclipse Cannon. Sonic and Tails learn that Dr. Eggman and more importantly, the Eclipse Cannon are up in space in a place called Space Colony Ark, a place that was abandoned 50 years ago after an accident. And after finding his secret base that was hidden in an Egyptian desert thanks to the help of Knuckles, they take Eggman's secret spaceship up to Space Colony Ark, and after a few turns and whistles, confront Dr. Eggman and Shadow. The game's story is broken into 2 playable campaign modes, Hero Story and Dark Story. And if you want the story to make any sense, it's best to play the Dark Story first. After you beat both story campaigns, you unlock one final story called Last Story. I'm not going to go into too many details about it because I'm pretty sure most of you have already played this game, considering it's past a decade old now. And while I could go into full detail about the plot with things like how new character Rouge the Bat is actually an undercover government spy working for the president to spy on Dr. Eggman, or Shadow's dark past that took place 50 years ago and how he's trying to avenge his best friend Maria's death, or how the Bio-Lizard was the actual ultimate life form, and so on and so on. But I'm not gonna do that here. But for those of you who haven't played the game, and I've heard people say the story had tons of plot holes, it's very true. There are a ton of them. However, I'm not going to cover them all, but instead, I'm going to list the top 5 that bothered me the most. Complaint number 1, the stupid confusion between Sonic and Shadow. Now, I will give Dr. Eggman a pass because when he first discovers Shadow in the beginning of the game, the room was kinda dark. But later in the game, where a news channel shows footage of Shadow standing on a lit up bridge, you can clearly see that he doesn't look anything like Sonic. But the worst of all was how Amy mistook Shadow for Sonic in broad fucking daylight. I mean, come on, what the hell? I'm pretty sure they were trying to be funny with this, but no, it was not funny. It was not funny in the slightest. I swear, this even bugged me when I was a kid. I'm sure it bugged all of us. It was just stupid. Completely stupid. Complaint number 2 is how Shadow mistook Maria's final wish as an act for revenge. I mean, seriously, how in the hell did he come to that conclusion? I mean, look at this girl. Does she look like the type of person who would wish death upon millions of innocent people? I'm just saying, even back when I first played this game, I thought it was completely dumb how Shadow seriously believed that. Complaint number 3? Amy is freaking useless. Amy went through some pretty good character development in the last game. She learned to stop being so dependent on Sonic and learned to stand up for herself. But here, she lost all that character growth, and was reverted back to an annoying, useless character that got herself captured not once, but twice. You can just tell she was shoehorned into the story with no rhyme or reason because they don't even explain how she ended up on Prison Island in the first place. I mean, what did she do, row a boat or something? I mean, okay, she did somewhat help when she gave Shadow the "people are good" speech, but I'm sorry, prior to that, she was just a useless character who really wasn't needed for the story at all. And it's a shame because she could have been a decent character had they kept her character growth from the last game. Complaint number 4 had to do with Rouge. Rouge is a cool character, but the way they handled her occupation as a spy was horrible. She's supposed to be a good character, and well, if she was, why didn't she stop Dr. Eggman from blowing up Prison Island? How come she didn't alert the president that the true criminal who stole the Chaos Emerald was Shadow to clear Sonic's name? Why didn't she take the Chaos Emeralds out of the Eclipse Cannon when she had the chance to after Shadow confronted her? And there are a few more that I'm leaving out. My point is, they handled her character very poorly. And finally, complaint number 5 had to do with Sonic using Chaos Control with the fake Chaos Emerald. Tails even said that the fake Chaos Emerald was not as powerful as the real one, but what was even more stupid was the fact that Sonic has never used Chaos Control before. It was just a very gross use of plot convenience, if anything. And well, those are the 5 main plot holes that bugged me the most, but believe me, there are a lot more that I haven't pointed out. You really have to shut your brain off to enjoy the story because the story in and of itself isn't necessarily bad, it's just that it was poorly executed. Admittedly, I still mildly enjoyed the story, despite the stupid plot holes, and just took it at face value. As far as the story mode went, this game had no open hub worlds, unlike the last Sonic Adventure game. Instead, they went for a simplistic point A to point B style, where you race through a level, watch a cutscene, then immediately start the next level. Now, the gameplay in the first Sonic Adventure game was broken up into 6 different gameplay styles. In Sonic Adventure 2, however, the gameplay was broken up into 3 different gameplay styles instead: action stages, treasure hunting stages, and mech shooting stages. For the most part, the gameplay at its core is still the same as the last game, only a bit more refined with tighter controls. You race through the levels to reach the end goal, get rankings on how well you did in said level, and you're also able to once again find special upgrades that give the characters more abilities. The key feature in this game was the heavy use of the action button, and for the most part, it works fine, but for Sonic and Shadow, not so much. You see, they mapped the spin dash, somersault, light dash, and for Sonic, the bounce attack on the same button, and this could be very problematic at times. For example, say you come to an edge and try to use the light dash on a trail of rings. Instead, you may perform the somersault. Or for Sonic, when you're falling from the sky and try to light dash on a trail of rings, you may end up performing the bounce attack, making you plummet to your death. Thankfully, it doesn't seem to happen too much, but when it does happen, man is it annoying. But aside from Sonic and Shadow, the action button works just fine for the other characters. Now, as far as the treasure hunting stages go, I personally didn't mind them. I've always enjoyed scavenger hunting, so the treasure hunting stages didn't bother me too much, at first. The main issue I had is how they butchered the radar system. In the first game, you were able to find the emerald pieces in any order you wanted. Here, however, you have to find them in chronological order. Even if you find yourself next to a piece, if it's not the one you're supposed to get, the radar will not go off. This was just annoying, and to this day, I still don't understand why they did this. Like I said before, the problem is that the treasure hunting stages get bigger and bigger as you progress through the game, and it just made it all the more annoying doing these stages. Thankfully, Knuckles and Rouge have great movement speed and overall control, but still, I'd be lying if I said the radar change didn't annoy me at all. The mech stages were by far my least favorite. However, I will say that the gameplay style made sense for Dr. Eggman, because, well, look at him. Does he look like someone who enjoys physical activity? A walking mech robot made a lot of sense for his character, but not for Tails. The reason why Tails was put in a mech to begin with was because he originally wasn't going to be a playable character, but when fans found this out, they were outraged, and the developers threw him in at the last minute, and made him into a Dr. Eggman clone. It would have been better if they kept Tails' original gameplay style from the first adventure game, but there most likely was not enough time to do that, which was a shame. Because after looking at some pretty cool Sonic Adventure 2 mod videos here on YouTube, it looks like it would have been fun to play Tails the way he was meant to be played as. The main reason why I didn't like the mech shooting stages all that much was because the mech robots felt clunky and slippery at the same time, making for some awkward movement and floaty jumping, which was pretty uncomfortable. I mean, they're not the worst controls out there, but out of all three gameplay styles, the mech shooting was definitely my least favorite. The boss battles were okay. The rival battles were slightly improved, as the characters don't just stand there and take a beating, like they did in the last game. But they were still relatively easy. The robot bosses themselves were also pretty easy for the most part. Really, the main boss battles that I thought were fun was King Boom Boo for Knuckles, the Egg Golem for Sonic, and the final showdown for Sonic and Shadow or Shadow and Sonic. Sonic and Shadow's final face-off was just badass. You pretty much have to outrun each other and try to hit each other with the light dash attack. The battle was just fast and action-packed, and it was such a good way to give these two hedgehogs one heck of a final showdown. Well, at least for its time anyway. However, the boss battle against the Bowser for Shadow was freaking frustrating. I swear, I lost to this boss so many times when I first played this game as a kid. The fight starts out fine, but when you get his health to the red area, he messes with the gravity, and you have to float your way to his life support system while avoiding these projectile balls that fly in all sorts of directions. If you get hit once, you lose all your rings, and you better pray you don't get hit again, because if you do, you have to start the whole fight all over again. It was just not a good time. The only saving grace this boss had was that he had a cool song playing in the background. The last and final boss battle of the game against the Bowlizard was okay, I guess. It wasn't too hard of a fight. You play as Super Sonic and Super Shadow, and you have to use the super homing attack into the Bowlizard's weak spot. As you're doing this, you have to avoid incoming projectiles and a freaking laser beam that will knock you back if it hits you. And if that isn't enough for you, you have a time limit. If you take too long doing this, the screen will go red and you'll automatically lose, and this is pretty much what happens. But like I said, the boss itself isn't all that hard, and actually was pretty fun. All in all, the boss battles in this game were mediocre to okay. Now the music in this game is good, really good. It's one of my all-time favorite soundtracks of any Sonic game. The majority of music followed more of a rock theme, as a lot of the songs put heavy emphasis on electric guitar, but since I'm a fan of rock music to begin with, I had no problem with this at all. The level songs for Sonic, Shadow, Tails, Dr. Eggman, and Rouge all sounded great. As far as Knuckles' rap songs went, I still don't understand why they chose rap to represent him, and they still don't fit the character at all in my opinion. But I can admit that I did like the themes for Death Chamber and Pumpkin Hill. That being said, I really loved Rouge's jazz-inspired music. Seriously, she had so many good songs, from Security Hall to even Mad Space. Her music just sounded so unique, and they worked well for her character. As far as the character theme songs went, the themes for Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles were all remixed versions of their songs from the first adventure game. And honestly, I prefer the originals more, but that's just me. In saying that though, I really enjoyed the themes for Shadow, Rouge, and Dr. Eggman. Their theme songs were out freaking standing. So with the exception of a few songs, I absolutely love this game's music, and it's easily in my top 10 game soundtracks of all time. The voice acting on the other hand, well, it did slightly improve. The voices fit the characters very well for the most part. The voices for Knuckles, Shadow, Rouge, and Dr. Eggman sounded just fine. Ryan Drummond's Sonic had a better tone, but some of his script reading was a little spotty, and this was the same deal with Tails, but overall, the voice acting was decent. However, the sound mixing in this game was abysmal. Characters step over each other's lines, the background music was way too loud, much to the point where it made it hard to hear what the characters were saying. Really, the only thing that they improved on from the last game was the music transitions, as the music this time around now fades in and out instead of ending abruptly. So at the very least, that was an improvement. But again, the sound mixing as a whole left a lot to be desired. Now this game had tons of replay value, in the form of emblem collecting from completing missions and levels, a very crappy kart racing minigame, a boss rush mode, and last but not least, a Chow Garden to raise little monsters. So really, for its time, this game had tons of content. So what are my final thoughts on Sonic Adventure 2? Do I think it's a good game, and do I think it deserves all the hate it tends to get these days? Here's what I have to say. I think Sonic Adventure 2, for its time, was a good game. It was definitely no masterpiece, but it still was good. Yes, I used to think this game was amazing when I was a kid, and when I went back to replay the game for the review, I did notice a few issues like the dumb plot holes in the story, the bad sound editing, the bad camera controls, and a few of the occasional gameplay issues. But here's the thing, I think people tend to forget that this game is way past a decade old. Considering that this game was the second 3D adventure game for Sonic, it was inevitable that it would make a few mistakes. Mistakes that were obviously addressed in the later games. Again, I'm not saying that this game is perfect, but for 1999, it did what it was supposed to do, which was to experiment with what worked and didn't work for a Sonic game. So no, I don't think this game is bad. Now, I will admit that I do think the first Sonic Adventure game was a better game overall, because it made me feel like I was on a real adventure. But still, despite some of the problems I had with this game, I still found myself enjoying it, and it's still one of my favorite Sonic games of all time. That all being said, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle gets 8 out of 10. I will accept that this game is not perfect, and I may be a tad blinded by nostalgia, and I'm okay with that. All I know is that I did enjoy playing this game, despite a few of its hiccups, and the way I see it, it was a necessary game to push Sonic's career deeper into the 3D gaming world. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more gaming goodness. I'm Decadent Gamer and have a great day. Thanks for watching.